Welcome back to Deconstructing DJG. I am DJG and I am here with Cameron and David. We are back talking about James Dobson and the strong-willed child. So, James Dobson is obviously very, very pro corporal punishment. He insists that you should be doing, all the other things to discipline your children, but that corporal punishment should at least be a threat that you're making, if not a very integral component of your discipline of your children. What I find particularly insidious is the way that he and Michael Pearl and Bill Gothard and others all connect this trauma bond thing to where you don't just discipline your child with corporal punishment, you follow that up with holding them in your arms, telling them how much they're loved, like reconnecting, blah, blah, blah.
Real cult shit, basically.
Oh, yeah. And it absolutely grooms children to accept bullying and abuse later in life because that has been paired with love from early childhood. Because James Dobson, of course, reports corporal punishment for children as young as 18 months old.
What is corporal punishment in this sense? It's talking about spanking the kid?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make a point from the Stray Animal Foundation. The consequences of animal abuse. One of the most significant consequences of animal abuse is the physical harm it causes to animals. Abused animals may suffer from malnutrition, dehydration, injuries, infections, and diseases. They may even die as a result of mistreatment. Moreover, animals that are subjected to abuse may also develop behavioral problems such as aggression, fear, and anxiety, and may make them difficult to adopt or integrate into society. People who abuse animals are more likely to engage in violent behavior towards other humans. They may also be more likely to have mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and antisocial personality disorder. Studies have shown that there is a strong correlation between animal abuse and domestic violence, which means that those who are abused themselves may also be more likely to perpetrate abuse against animals. Animal abuse can have significant economic consequences. Similarly, if a pet owner neglects or abuses an animal, he may end up spending more money on veterinary bills, which can have a negative effect on his financial well-being. Depending on the severity of the abuse, the offender may face criminal animal abuse charges, fines, and even jail time. In many countries, there are laws against animal abuse in place to protect animals from cruelty and abuse, and those who violate these laws can face serious legal consequences. I don't know. I feel like there might be an analogy there between animal abuse and child abuse, but I'm not sure.
So I'll point out, children are less hairy than animals, so you can't make the conclusion. There's no correlation at all because of the amount of hair that animals mostly have.
With James Dobson specifically, in either the first or the second chapter of this book, he explains the necessity of breaking a child's will with corporal punishment by giving an anecdote of a time that he beat their dog.
I heard that. It was fat. He literally like went into I think it was like a 2-3 minute rant of him literally fighting his dog.
Yeah.
He just full on fisticuffs with his dog. I'm like,
it's like 2 whole pages.
It's not a big dog either. It's a tiny dog. And he's like
fisticuffing
his dog.
Like I'm not an animal person. But that's why I went to this.
That's so hilariously stupid. Just fisticuffing your tiny little less than 30 pounds dog.
Yeah, it was a very small dog.
What do you expect the dog to learn other than the fact that, oh no, my owner now beats me?
Well, and towards the end of the story, he's like, the most unimaginable thing happened. Siggy bit my arm. And I'm like, you're beating the dog. What do you think it's going to do? It's going to defend itself. Come on now. But anyways, he has a history of abusing animals. And so it is a very small jump to abusing children from there. And I have concerns about the
moral
potential of domestic violence in his house, and absolutely the moral fiber to be telling people how to raise their children.
What kind of
Like-
fiber should he have then? Like, I don't know, like what's
kind of
Well, it's not something Metamucil is going
Dietary?
to fix. So
more dietary fiber maybe? What's that cereal that's like supposedly full of fiber? I can't remember it.
what's that one that looks like cat food?
Raisin Bran? No, but
Cracklin'
like
Oat
he
Bran.
needs
He says that this corporal punishment towards children is certainly not going to be a negative influence on the child when it comes to
of course not.
behavioral problems, etc., because the average 16-year-old in 1977 has watched 18,000 murders during his formative years, including a daily bombardment of knifing, shootings, hanging, decapitations, and general dismemberment. Like,
When was
what
this?
movies are
What?
you allowing your child to watch?
No, like
They have
what
seen
time zone?
18,000 murders.
I mean, I can believe that these days just because of just like
Mhm.
video games and everything. But it's like
Oh, yeah.
YouTube.
you say
I
1970s kid?
Yeah.
I can absolutely see that today. I can totally see
Yeah.
that in the modern world with people playing video games online. People
Yeah, you
wanna-
go through you literally like one game, you like get like 60 kills, die 20 times, and like boom, what do you
Right.
get?
Right.
or watch Game of Thrones.
There's probably actually more in depth in video games than in that, but at the same time, it is quite the stretch to say, hey, this is causing more of that. If we just went to westerns, really, it's probably because that's why you mentioned hangings.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
in westerns was only like 3 to 5 deaths per movie.
That's true. But he
Um,
basically says that, you know,
That's
everyone's looking, the psychological wizards of our day search elsewhere for the cause of brutality and eventually point the finger of blame at the parents who are diligently training our future responsible citizens. So, you
Love
know, spankings are getting a bad rap because clearly the movies and video games are a bigger problem, even though studies have shown that seeing violence in video games and movies and whatnot does not have a direct correlation to behavioral issues as far as violence, domestic violence, etc. However, being abused as a child absolutely does.
I can see the argument that, hey, this is a thing that is, it makes it something that people are more willing to think of as a possible behavior that is doable in society.
I don't think it makes it more normal or less normal. The
Like,
parents now expect it because
No,
they
like,
see it all the time.
The Overton window. This is the most generous interpretation. All these actions shown on television expand the realm of behaviors that are normalized.
I
Yeah.
can't help but see satanic panic in it.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
just like,
Absolutely.
oh no, they'll read Harry Potter and try and cast magic spells. It's like,
Yes.
dude.
Granted,
Yes.
at the time it was Disney movies, but same.
Oh, I guess
I posit that any boy who went up to girl in recess and knelt down and tried to give do true love's kiss would be teased relentlessly as being cringe. Correct?
No,
Yes.
no. That guy would be like such a Chad, you know? Like, everyone would be like, oh my god, that guy he did. He was incredible. No, yeah, he'd probably get
And any
absolutely
girl who
blasted.
danced around singing to the birds, trying to get them, expecting them to literally fly around her.
Do my chores. Come
yeah,
I'd
on.
be down for that.
I have been lied to by Disney. I thought for sure if I was a friend of the animals, they would come in and clean my house.
That'd be
Like-
kind of cool, actually.
It would
Yeah.
be very cool.
Like if
Do my do dishes? Hell yeah.
like not in imagination space, but literally expecting the birds to fly around and sing with her.
Yeah.
Would be looked at as, okay, you're kind of cringe.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe.
If I would say of the Disney adults, that's something that is completely like understood and appreciated, and we're all mad about it. Outside of that realm, it's like, okay, calm down. So with his own children, he had trouble with his kids, obviously. One of them was his daughter, who had issues like staying on schedule in the morning and like not having to have somebody like over her constantly making sure she was doing shit. Even though, in my opinion, that's kind of what parents do, you know? Like, I can appreciate if this is like a junior hire or something that's struggling with this, but if your child is struggling with task awareness and time blindness, things like that. There are absolutely strategies, but I will give him that in the 1970s, neurodivergence was completely
Off the radar.
off the radar. Nobody
I mean,
knew jack shit
fair.
about it.
But like, there's
So
still
the
some
thing
level of,
is,
like,
though,
don't
this
beat
book
kid.
is still in print. He has not updated it. It is still in print, still sold on his website, still promoted by Focus on the Family on their radio show, their YouTube channel, their website, and every other method of outreach that they have. So he has not gone back to go, oh, you know what? We didn't know about neurodivergence back then. Let me add this addendum of like, hey, I gave this advice, but it's not great advice because we didn't understand neurodivergence. No, he's got this all right because it was godly advice. Now he moves on to ADHD, and he has all of these stories of mothers that are just at their wits' end because of their hyperactive children. And this is what the doctor is saying to say to your child, Johnny, this time mommy means business. Are you listening to me? Do not get out of this bed. Do you understand me? And then when Johnny's feet touch the floor, give him a swat on the legs with a small switch. Put the switch on his dresser where he can see it and promise him one more stroke if he gets up again. Walk confidently out of the room without comment, and if he rebounds again, fulfill your promise and offer the same warning if he doesn't stay in bed.
Okay, number one, does he not understand that a certain type of child will grab that switch and hit his mother?
Right? Oh my God.
What my mom did was we would have a hot milk or chamomile tea before bed, and at certain points go to bed. If you can't sleep, read until your eyes get tired, and then if you can't sleep, close your eyes and pretend to sleep. This combativeness is not the strategy. This is
just aggressive.
This is an objectively incorrect strategy for parenting. You're going to create violence where it doesn't need to be, which is bed.
Yeah.
You're going to increase the child's heart rate. You're going to associate
cortisol levels go up.
The stress rate, the cortisol, all the hormones that you don't want in sleep. You're also going to associate sleep with trauma, leading to more nightmares.
I don't know if you guys are up to date on this. Ruby Franke was a Mormon momfluencer. She had a YouTube channel with like 2 million subscribers, and she basically covered raising her 6 kids with her husband.
2 million?
2 million.
Damn.
And
okay.
People started pointing out things that were very sketch about the way that she was raising her children, dubious choices that she made. And one of those that people caught on real early with was that her, I think it was an 8-year-old, forgot to pack her own lunch. And so when the school called her to say, hey, so-and-so forgot her lunch, can you bring her something? She said no, she can go hungry. She knows it's her job to have her food ready to go. And it's like, ma'am.
It literally isn't. It's your job to be the fallback.
Yes. So James Dobson says, if Janie carelessly loses her lunch money, let her skip a meal. Obviously, it is possible to carry this principle too far, being harsh and inflexible with an immature child, but the best approach is to expect boys and girls to carry the responsibility that is appropriate for their age, and occasionally to taste the bitter fruit that irresponsibility bears. Natural consequences, I am all for, but forcing a child to starve?
Their child should have responsibility up to point X, which is determined by the child's age. But the child needs to know that they have the parent to fall back on.
Yes.
I'm curious. Does he justify all this? Because he says responsibility appropriate to their age. So obviously he has the wrong idea of when responsibility is appropriate for which age. Is he justifying all this off the whole antiquity that the Jewish, at least biblically, you were an adult at 13? Is that why he's completely off?
Ooh.
So, fun fact, when boys have a bar mitzvah at 12, girls have a bat mitzvah at 13, that does not mean that they are an adult. It means that at that point, they are responsible for their actions morally and spiritually. So it's kind of like the age of accountability
So now
in
they can go to hell.
evangelicalism. Well, there's no hell in Judaism,
Well,
but
for evangelicals, though.
yeah, exactly. So it has nothing to do with actually being an adult in society as far as social responsibilities, financial responsibilities. It is strictly for your own moral, spiritual conduct.
That Dobson doesn't know that.
Oh, guarantee you he doesn't. Guarantee you he does not know that. Or if he does know it, he doesn't care and he ignores it.
I want to make a small point. The reason it matters that the parent has to be there to be there for the child if things go wrong, because otherwise the biblical injunction to protect the widows and the orphans is irrelevant. Protect the orphans assumes that the parents are the people there to protect the child. If the parent is supposed to let the child go hungry, then there is no difference between a parentless child and an orphan immaterially. And that's literally against the biblical worldview.
Not that they care about that, because widows and orphans, like, that's social programs. That sounds like socialism.
Right, but it's
all the church is supposed to deal with that.
Right, well, they want socialism within the church.
No, that's
but they don't want socialism.
This is a matter of justice, which is law and government. That is not a matter of charity. This is about a matter of justice, not charity.
They don't want socialism in the church. They want to have control of the money, so they decide who it goes to.
What kind of Protestant is he? Some sort of Bible?
I want to say he's Assemblies of God.
Are they Bible alone, sola scriptura?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Literals.
Yes.
I assume they have apostasy too.
Yes.
Okay. How is it that I, the Catholic, have a better interpretation of the Bible and the literal text?
That's just like
your opinion. Exactly. That's just like your opinion, man. What's funny is if you bring up questions like that to leaders like this, they will tell you that you obviously are having a crisis of faith. And you should pray more and you should listen to your pastor. They don't actually engage in a textual conversation about that. They don't want to talk about that at all. They will just, tell you that you clearly are confused. The world has gotten to you. And so therefore you need to just listen to your pastor more.
How do you get to be a pastor if you don't know how to answer these questions?
So, like, when my dad finished seminary, he went through a process called ordination. And that is where he goes up against a council of pastors within our denomination. And they ask him a ton of questions. But here's the thing. They're looking specifically for the doctrines of the denomination. They are looking for the right answers. And if you don't have the right answers, it doesn't matter if you can back it up with the Bible. You're clearly not in line with this denomination. And so therefore, they are not going to ordain you.
Ask questions and then just accept the answers.
If you can't answer the questions that the laity is bringing to you, why are you a pastor?
No, as the laity, all the lay people do is they ask a question and they accept the answer regardless of it.
Exactly.
So
that's not.
You just give any answer. As long as it sounds good, it doesn't really matter. They'll basically accept it.
That's not the relationship I've come across in most parishes.
I mean, that's evangelicalism kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So, in this next section, he does a bunch of question and answer. So people have written him questions. He has sent them letters back with his answers, and he is including those conversations in the book. One that particularly interested me was a pair of missionaries asking what they should do with their children while they are on the mission field, because they're going to be in a very remote area. There is likely not going to be a school nearby. And especially in the 70s and 80s, missionaries who are parents were heavily pushed to put their kids into these missionary kid boarding schools so that way the parents could focus on the ministry, because obviously children are just a distraction, right?
Very much so, yes.
My MK support group is just chock full of these kids who had to grow up in boarding schools that were rife with all sorts of abuse. So his answer, what will we do with the children? That is often the most difficult question missionaries must answer. I don't propose to have final solutions to this thorny problem, although I do have some definite views on the subject. So, I'm not the authority, but I got some big feelings about this.
He's saying, this is what you should do, but if it goes wrong, not my fault.
Exactly.
This sounds like he's trying to sound like Paul. I don't have a word from the Lord. This is my general feeling of what he's trying to sound like Paul.
That tracks. He's got a whole bunch of those in here. He's like, I'm not qualified to talk about theology, so let me talk about theology for a couple of pages. Like, he does this all the time.
I'm just like you, but I fly private jets.
Yeah. So he says, I've dealt with the children of missionaries, many of whom had become bitter and resentful of the sacrifices they were required to make. They were deprived of a secure home at a critical stage in their development and experienced deep emotional wounds in the process. Consequently...
Pause. That phrase can cover anywhere between they feel bad because they miss their mommy and daddy, and mommy and daddy didn't go home to their recital, and all the way to they were essayed in the boarding school.
It is kind of weirdly how, he actually kind of, seems to know the problem.
Right.
Where it's this is the issue.
He's almost
and
there.
And then
he
kind of, goes and says, and he gives advice on something he doesn't have advice on.
Exactly.
Where he gives, this is what you should do on something he previously said, I will not give advice on.
Yeah, that's bad. And you should feel sad about that.
And you should probably be, mad at the parents and God for all that, too. It's why are we here? Because you chose this.
So he gets into that, actually. He says, consequently, adolescent rebellion was common among these angry young people who resented their parents and the God who sent them abroad.
So angry.
Yeah, there's so much victim blaming in here. These kids had horrible childhoods. Every single missionary kid I have ever talked to as an adult, they have all had severe issues that were caused by being a missionary.
Those are the best kind of issues.
So he, of course, says that basically they should homeschool. That's the only okay thing to do.
It's the only godly thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. These parents are going to be doing full-time missionary work in a foreign country that, if they said Colombia? In the 70s. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, only horseback gets you there, which is that's kind of crazy in itself.
Colombia in the 70s. Let me look this up real quick.
If you were white at that time, you were very likely to go missing.
There's a Colombian civil war going on then.
Yeah, they love running headfirst into danger, and then as an afterthought are like, oh my God, what about the kids? Maybe this isn't a great place for kids. Well, then maybe it's not a great place for families.
Yeah, covert CIA involvement. Anyone white is going to be assumed to be CIA.
Yes.
So, putting kids in that...
I know.
Great. I mean, it's actually kind of funny. He says himself he can think of no better method to create problems in a child, which is there you go.
There's never even a momentary thought of, maybe missions isn't for you because your kids would be negatively affected no matter what you choose.
I think the thing is he
just get a fucking job, dude.
He puts way too much emphasis on the relationship between the children and the parents.
Yeah.
It's the only one that actually...
That's so like boilerplate homeschooler propaganda, is that the relationship between the child and their parents, the child and their siblings, those are the only things that actually matter in their formative years. And basically everyone.
There's also this thing called geopolitics. He's completely ignoring. Here's an interesting thought, okay? In very old translations of the Bible, the blessed are those who hunger and thirst after
righteousness.
Justice.
I was going to say seafood, but sure.
And in the Latin, it was translated into justitia. It got translated into righteousness with Luther and people following him, his tradition of translation. And Dobson is very much in the world of righteousness.
Yes. I mean, yeah.
He has a holiness doctrine. So holiness doctrine was very big.
What does the KJV say for that specifically? Because that's what they're going to be using.
It says righteousness, because that's how I memorized it.
I think that he has no concern for justice.
No, he doesn't. Not at all. Not at all. It's all parents' rights, my way or the highway, my Protestantism, my evangelicalism, covers a multitude of sins.
If it was translated differently, would Mr. Dobson here be like, justice, that'd be cool, and then like doesn't beat children?
Possibly, who knows? Goddamn Protestant Reformation, man.
Like, I feel like we kind of cool have a time machine to see how small of a thing you can change and see how big of a change you can get from it.
Okay,
just step on a butterfly and be gone.
Yeah. Okay, I know how the simplest thing to do: make Martin Luther a Franciscan instead of an Augustinian. The Augustinians are all about, basically triggered all of Martin Luther's neuroses. Franciscans are all about the love of God and openness to the Spirit.
Good vibes.
Yeah, there would probably be a Lutheran order of the Catholic Church now.
Yeah. So this little chestnut here, it's in the middle of a book on discipline, right? Why is he talking about the Equal Rights Amendment?
May I answer this? Because my mom was involved in this fight.
For or against?
You know the answer.
I was hoping.
The Equal Rights Amendment would enshrine abortion rights in the Constitution in a way that Roe was only a decision.
Okay. So
granted, the Equal Rights Amendment, the main components of it were allowing women to own property, have their own bank accounts without having their husband or father as a co-signer, to take out loans, to work without the permission of a father or husband. No-fault divorce allowed women to actually request divorces. So there were many things that evangelicals were not on board with. So and it was the radicalization, basically, of the religious base that managed to put such pressure on trying to prevent the Equal Rights Amendment from happening.
Which is the result of, partially, my mom doing some really hard work. That's one of her That's one of her lesser accomplishments.
Wait, so she was against herself getting a bank account?
Pretty much.
Because she saw it as being a stepping stone to fully encoding abortion into the Constitution.
So there was a woman, Phyllis Schlafly. There is actually a Hulu dramatized show about Phyllis Schlafly and others. Oh, no, it's not like pro Phyllis Schlafly.
No, I'm just saying, of course, Hulu made a drama about something.
So anyways, he says, I am in favor of constitutional rights for both women and men, but I am unalterably opposed to this amendment. Why? Because the wording is so nebulous that the ultimate interpretation of its meaning will be made by the nation's judicial system. And frankly, I don't trust the judges to whom the legal issues will be appealed. I've seen their handiwork during the past 10 years and shudder to think that the future of our families may depend on their decisions. Sir, that is their fucking job. So yes, they would do that. But
I actually understand this, where he's like the nebulousness thing and not trusting the legal system. I understand that, actually. So I can see why he's against
to an extent,
that.
I can, sure, but
just like
they
with the
didn't.
Supreme Court being the way it is now, it's like I don't necessarily trust it entirely. So like he has the exact same view
That's
of it.
true.
If they can take a sentence or an amendment as that says that you need to that the militia needs to be well regulated, and say that
Gun rights. I will say, like, slight tangent, but like some of the constitutional law people, like they pull some completely out of pocket ideas.
Trump's lawyer was being grilled by 3
that was amazing.
judges. That was amazing. And basically they were like, so are you saying that the only way a president can face civil or criminal consequences for anything done while in office is to have been
impeached and
what's
convicted.
The word? Impeached and convicted. Yes. And he couldn't ever give a straight answer. Best he got was a qualified yes.
And then she turned around and said, so can a president be criminally prosecuted for sending SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his political rivals if he is not impeached and convicted?
And he wouldn't say no. He wouldn't say no.
Where they were arguing to give Biden the ability to basically off Trump, essentially.
The judges were trying to say that obviously someone should, be faced with the justice system if they use their, SEAL Team 6 to off a political rival or whatever.
The lawyers are arguing against themselves, essentially, if they're not careful.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to give Trump all the power, and then like, well, he's not the president.
Oh, they've never actually admitted that he's not the president.
I find that so dumb. Like, dude.
So ridiculous. We have litigated this over and over and over again. Like, no, you did not win, dude.
How many lawsuits was there? Way too many.
30 some odd lawsuits.
I've watched Sovsits make better arguments.
It's sad, dude.
This is in a chapter on sibling rivalry. And he basically says that the source of sibling rivalry is parental favoritism. And that there are 3 main areas where this is particularly true.
I mean, he doesn't sound entirely wrong in that sense.
I agree. So he says that children are extremely sensitive about the matter of physical attractiveness and body characteristics. So
puberty, yeah.
You should not be giving one child, praises for looking cute and then never tell the other kid that they are handsome or whatever.
I mean, makes sense.
Right, makes sense.
So I'm not sure if agreeing with him is a bad thing or not, because it's his reputation.
I'm super worried about this so far, because if he's being good so far, he's going to be totally off the rails when he goes on. I'm so scared.
Just give it time.
I'm scared.
So second is the matter of intelligence. That is another sensitive nerve to be handled with care.
So far, I agree with that.
It's not uncommon to hear parents say in front of their children, I think the younger boy is actually brighter than his brother. There's way too much like, can't you just be like your brother? Or can't you just be like your sister?
Yeah, no,
like,
that is fucked up.
And that is absolutely going to cause sibling rivalry. 100%.
Or emotional stability or emotional normal or emotional mood. Like,
well, the stability won't be there.
Well, why aren't you cheerful like your brother? Why aren't you more serious like your brother?
So in the third realm is that children, especially boys, are extremely competitive with regard to athletic abilities. Like it makes sense that you should not be setting up these sibling rivalries. But he basically latches onto that as like the only cause for sibling rivalry, that parents are showing favoritism to one child or another.
No, that's not it.
And that definitely doesn't help. But the kids interacting on their own are going to have issues,
I think it's like prioritizing the parent-child relationship over all else.
Yeah.
The sibling relationship doesn't even exist to him.
But I just find it funny that he always brings it back to the parents. Like, it's all about you.
Yeah.
It's not about the kids. It's all about you.
Well, it's all about him.
Him, yeah. That's
and
fair.
He's like, well, then obviously everyone is like me. And because it's all about me, it's also all about the parent, too. So it's like...
Exactly. Now, this honestly, like, I'm through, like, 15, 16 chapters of this book now, and this honestly takes the cake for the most tone-deaf response he could ever give. So this woman gives this horrible story.
Okay, these letters have been rubbing me the wrong way. Back in the 18th century, there's this amazing writer named Samuel Johnson who would write these letters to himself asking for advice, like supposedly from his readers. Everyone knew that he was writing them to himself, but they were meant to satirize types of people. Nobody writes like this.
That's true.
Like, I believe that he writes these letters.
Oh,
so like this one right here, you think he wrote? Because this is honestly like ridiculously tragic if it actually happened. Usually him pretending to be what would a exhausted, battered woman feel like, and then just kind of just vibing with that. Okay.
When I'm home, there's not enough time to even brush my teeth, let alone pray about Annie's behavior and my inferiority as a parent. That sentence is Dobsonism.
Nobody talks like that. Not even in the 70s.
If I spank her, she retorts, "That didn't even hurt." That is Dobsonism.
Yeah, I agree. So this woman is writing from a motel. She has run away from her family because she needs an uninterrupted night's sleep. So it's not that she has permanently left her family. She's just like, y'all stay here. I am going to the hotel so I can get a good night's sleep, and then I will be back.
She just has a 6-year-old daughter. Damn.
Well, so she's got a 6-year-old and a 5-month-old. And they've got various issues.
The father's not even there, probably.
But she says, I became a monster this past week. I hit my daughter across the face, bruised her arm from shaking her so hard, yelled and screamed and cried, and then wanted to die from guilt. Woman, Dobson, like, no, you don't get to glibly talk about violent physical abuse of a child. Like, you don't just gloss over that, right? And so what does Dobson do? Rather than addressing how to handle, being physically violent to your kids, blah, blah, blah.
Also exhaust and all other stuff too.
His response to this purported woman is a letter from another purported woman who is complaining that Christianity is entirely too geared towards people with children, and she, as a barren woman, is very othered and feels like an outsider in her own community because she doesn't have children. And he's like, I would love to get these two women in a room together so that way they could, a fascinating and possibly helpful conversation might develop between them.
It's the classic, they're suffering more than you are, so stop. I love that. It's just like really cool, Great.
This is not how you deal with this at all. I
find it funny that like they ignore the father's role in this entirely. It's just probably a shit situation all around, and everyone's just doing the wrong thing, honestly.
Or the role of police.
I don't think the police would be involved.
Well, baby shaking.
Oh, well, it was a 6-year-old though.
Still, you can still get shaken syndrome at that age.
Yeah. So this is a situation where police could legitimately be involved.
Well, they're not going to call the police, I guess we better say it.
Oh, yeah, Dobson definitely wouldn't call the police.
Right, but again, this is where the emphasis on personal righteousness versus justice is...
Well, I think even with that issue, though, if you talk about justice, I don't think calling the police would really achieve justice either. They're not really equipped to deal with the problem then, and so you got to bring in CPS, and then that's just like this entire thing.
There's no win.
Yeah, there's no win. You can maybe make it less of a lose, but like I just don't really see a win with that direction. But like they could change it so that there is a win if they actually were like not to follow Dobson's advice.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like I don't want to say literally any other advice giver, but there are so many better ones. Even then.
Yeah.
So next is his response to a letter from a purported single mom who is concerned that her sons are growing up without a male role model because the father is not in their life and she doesn't have living like brother's father. etc. So he talks about how, it's just impossible to raise children on your own in a healthy, well-adjusted way, because it's intended to be a two-person thing, not a single-person thing. And, he's like, there's always going to be something that gets missed. There's always going to be something that is not up to snuff if you're a single parent, right? But his suggestion will require a small amount of money, but I believe it will be well invested. I suggest you call the nearest high school guidance office and ask to speak to the counselor of third or fourth year students. Then explain your need to rent a mature athletic boy who can take your son to a park and teach him to throw ball, cast a fishing line, or build a playhouse.
I love how stereotypical he is with his manly things.
Right?
Okay.
Well, this is the 70s, so I guess everyone's stereotypical.
But rents a teenage boy?
Wait, is that? I was the person who's renting an adult.
No. Third or fourth year student is what they're looking for. So junior or senior.
Oh wait,
in high school.
I thought I was renting the counselor.
No, the counselor is going to be the pimp in this scenario.
God.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Okay, that's funny.
Right?
I mean, honestly, not the world's worst idea, but at the same time, hilarious.
I'm sorry, but with the scandals that keep coming out in the last few decades, any evangelical leader talking about renting boys, just no good can come from that.
Yeah,
no
that's fair.
Good.
That's fair. I was being a little too charitable.
We have talked about how Dobson and similar make children barely better than property. Well, here we're renting them now. So apparently you can just run down to Blockbuster and pick up a boy instead of a movie.
If you're paying the counselor or the kid you're renting.
That's a very good question.
Obviously, the counselor.
Right. That makes sense.
The kid might get a kickback.
Yeah, well, I feel like they should get a kick. Well, I guess because he's the pimp, so he gets the money.
He gets a cut.
Then the pimp pays the rentee.
Yeah.
This reminds me of when you're going to a wedding, you rent a date, so that way you can pretend to your family I get my life together.
Yeah, but that's an adult. If you're making an agreement with another adult that I feel better about.
It feels like a similar vibe where it's you're just
Cameron, how about you?
Someone else.
How about you? Would you have done this?
Would I have been rented, or would I rent somebody?
Would you have been rented?
Would I have been rented?
Would you have been willing to?
No, shoot. It depends on the kid, honestly.
I had a couple cousins that were in a nearby city, and they left the church long before I did. And so I, in my early 20s, my parents still thinking I'm in the church and everything, I'm living this godly life with my husband, blah, blah, blah. They were like, hey, can you're going to be up in this city, so could you maybe meet with so-and-so and just try to be a good influence to them? I got together with them and we had mimosas and we had a kiki at brunch and we went to a gay club and no, I was not a quote unquote good influence on them.
Yes, you were. You had.
Did you at least pray afterwards and confess your sins?
Fuck no.
Oh damn! Then you're bad influence.
You prayed with your mimosa. You had spirits.
You had spirits. That's true.
You had a spirit in your hand.
Well, so I'm not even going to say a bunch of the words that are on this page because I don't believe in using those words. They are horrible.
I'm kind of curious
words.
Of some of these words, just because where did the meaning come from?
They came from nowhere good.
One of the words comes from racism.
Yeah,
and then it comes from a sort of ableism.
Yeah, eugenics. Yep.
And then
which tracks, because let us not forget, as I say in basically every episode about Dobson, he studied under a former Yahtzee eugenicist. He's talking about a 7-year-old boy with Down syndrome. Insert awful phrases about that. He was frantically active and literally attacked my furniture when he entered the room. Now, this is while he is acting in his professional position as a psychologist, mind you.
These statements are things that I can believe are facts. So
that a little boy did this stuff. Yeah, I can completely believe that this kind of thing happens. He is saying that things like neurodivergence, ADHD, autism, blah, 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 those are all akin to developmental and mental defects.
That was a belief at certain times.
Yes, but again, this book is still in print and has not had any sort of addendum made to this.
There's some wild theories that have come out since then. So much have been defunct. If he'd put some of those wild theories in the updates or whatever, and then changed out wild theory by wild theory, I'd be like, okay, you're changing your theory to other ones that are still wrong.
He can't admit he's wrong, though.
You can't do that when you're talking about dogma. You gotta basically stick with what you're doing.
Yep.
Because once you admit weakness, then you just get eaten.
He says a truly hyperactive child can humble any adult, particularly if the disorder is not understood by his parent. Except Dobson doesn't understand it either. But anyways, he says that hyperactivity often appears related to the damage to the central nervous system, although it can be caused by emotional stress and fatigue. So, maybe the whole, corporal punishment and threats and whatnot of violence towards your children, perhaps that could affect things.
What did I say? The thing I said about animals might have some analogy. Oh my gosh.
Right?
We've already decided, though, babies are less hairy, so.
Exactly. Totally different. He basically says that it is due to damage to the head during birth, so having some sort of birth trauma. Now, I did look this up, and basically, according to recent studies, they have found that children with birth trauma have a higher likelihood of having neurodivergence. But it is not a primary cause of neurodivergence. He then conflates ADHD and neurodivergence with cerebral palsy. He says the difference between patients who are severely affected and are called cerebral palsied and those who have no obvious symptoms may reflect three variables. And he goes on to give three medical conditions. But the fact that he's conflating Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and neurodivergence as all basically one and the same thing. And this man is a licensed psychologist. And again, I recognize it was the 70s, but he has had 40, 50 years now of additional, medical findings that he could update his book. But God forbid he do that because, he might have been wrong.
I don't think
he totally doesn't care. I don't
think he just cares. Because people are still buying it. It's like, all right, cool.
Exactly. As long as enough people buy it, it does not matter. With a learning deficit, he says that academic achievement should be de-emphasized. So basically, if you have a learning disability, just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just, do your best, and we're not going to give you any additional supports. We're not going to look for what to put on an IEP. He says a visually handicapped child or to compete academically is like forcing a polio victim to run the 100-yard dash.
Is Dobson anti-vax or pro-vax? Because, I'm kind of curious.
I want to say he was pro-vax, but that has changed in recent years, primarily surrounding the COVID vaccine and the HPV vaccine. You're not supposed to get the HPV vaccine because only godless heathens that sleep around and get STDs need it. But this whole concept of you just not expecting anything out of children that have learning disabilities. But this is yet another piece that should be rewritten. This whole fucking book is just filled to the brim with things that are medically inaccurate, that are not borne out in the studies that have been done in the 50 years since. The whole thing needs to be thrown out. I swear to fucking God.
I have a nephew who has a severe autism and basically no emotional regulation and learning disabilities in certain areas. Some areas absolutely advanced for his age. Other areas, a complete waste of time trying to teach him in that area.
Yeah.
If you try and get him to study things that he's not interested in, you're never going to make progress. That does not mean that you shouldn't try to teach him where he can be taught.
Right. And you don't stop trying to find different ways to introduce material that is not his special interest, you know?
Right.
There's so many different ways, again, to do this the right way. He also says that neurodivergence goes away between the ages of 12 and 18.
Oh, neat. Convenient.
So all of us ADHD adults, we don't exist. Well, he would call us immature.
There we go. Thank you. No, you're undisciplined.
Yeah, correct. This child was taken to a pediatrician who said he was not actually hyperactive in the medical sense and should not be given medication for the mild problem. However, he's beginning to have learning problems at school because he can't stay in his seat and concentrate on lessons. Look, maybe break up his studies more, give him time to run around and wear himself out, and then sit down for 20 minutes and then
they have those apparently they have those seats that aren't stable. They can wiggle around on little balls.
Yes,
because they can wiggle and not
teach
make noise.
the kid to stim. So he says that it is likely that your son is immature in comparison with his peers and could profit from being retained in the first grade next year. He says to hold the kid back a year, but it is very important to have him switch schools for the repeated year, so that way the kids don't make fun of him for getting held back. Kids at the new school are still going to figure it out. You're a year older than everybody else here. But of course, the only accommodation that he is making for this child is just have him do first grade a second time. There's no adjustments for actually making learning easier for this child.
Oh, did any of you guys have to do with this alert system thing? The Wii alert system thing? 'Cause I think I remember they tried that one time, and I hated it so much. You have it in your underwear, and if you pee, it goes off. So that way, it essentially trains you to not pee at night. I don't remember much about it. I just remember it just was weird. It felt weird.
So he takes it beyond just having an alarm go off when you pee your pants. He says that when it goes off, the child needs to be instructed to wake one of the parents up, who is then to place him in a tub of cool water or splash cold water on his face. Both alternatives are unpleasant, of course, but are essential to the success of the program. The child is told that this is not a form of punishment for wetting the bed. It is necessary to help him break the habit so he can invite friends to spend the night and he can go to other homes as well.
Okay, say
that's
this with
still
me.
Fucking punishment.
I mean, just wear diapers, man.
No, say this with me.
Pampers. That's
say
what
this
it was.
with me. PAVLOV.
Yes.
This is not
ding,
punishment.
Ding, ding, ding.
This is dog training.
Yes.
I mean,
because again, children are just glorified
I will say,
dogs.
You can Pavlov people if you do.
Oh, you can
consistently enough and with enough, I guess, emphasis. Although I think it's 2 weeks and it goes away, so you got to keep it up for a long time.
Yeah, I have a Pavlovian response to the little ding 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 that happens in my video game whenever I find a red chest, which is the super rare ones. Confession time. When I was little, I had a big problem with wetting the bed for a long period of time, and we went to so many different doctors trying to figure out what the hell was going on. They made so many suggestions about stuff like this.
Why do you need doctors if you're bedwetting?
Because they wanted to find out if there was a physiological reason for it. But I just don't get the signal to tell me to go to the bathroom, and especially when I was sleeping very soundly, my brain didn't recognize the body signals that I needed to wake up and go to the bathroom. Now, I don't remember exactly how we fixed it because I was like 7. But we did manage to get that under control. Now, as an adult, I still struggle with stuff like that. Now, I don't pee my pants, but I will be sitting there and like not need to go to the bathroom, not need to go to the bathroom, not need to go to our bathroom. Oh my God, it's an emergency. We must go to the bathroom now. And I will have similar issues with hunger and thirst to where I just don't perceive the body signals.
And then, oh my gosh, I have to drink a full liter or full of water right now.
But then you start the whole body shaking, then you're like, well, shit, I'm hungry.
Now, the fun part about this is that in my case, it is most likely related to my CPTSD and how much disassociation I do.
Isn't disassociation amazing?
Well, it is until it isn't. The fact that I was under so much intense, some of it was neglect, some of it was abuse, some of it was, a lesser variation of one of those two things, but I disassociated a lot when I was a kid. It was how I got through things. And I remember a handful of times where I would get yelled at because I was doing something weird while dissociating. One particular thing when I was in 3rd grade that I swear to God I will remember until the day that I die, because I was doing something weird while disassociating. And even now as an adult, because I have chronic pain, I still dissociate from my body a good deal because I need to not feel the pain. And so I dissociate. And that has the unintended side effect of making it to where I don't necessarily recognize body urges until it's like at 10. And then all of a sudden it finally reaches through to my brain. So all of this stuff that we're talking about, that causes aggression and anxiety and dehydration and whatnot in dogs happens to us people too. He then talks about this other child psychology expert. This other expert says that children are generally good. He says, while children lie a lot, because so many parents rely heavily on rewards and punishment, I firmly believe that the tendency to lie is not natural in youngsters. It is a learned response.
I mean, I completely agree with that.
Absolutely agree with that. Makes perfect sense. But James Dobson livid about this. He says it contradicts scriptural understanding. Jeremiah wrote, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" The record of civilization is blotted by murder, war, rape, plundering from the time of Adam forward. Surely during one of those thousands of years, there must have been at least one generation for whom parents did things right. Yet greed, lust, and selfishness have characterized us all. You're not going to get a perfect generation.
They're definitely trying for it.
Did Mary and Joseph not raise Jesus right?
Oh. So he says parents who believe all toddlers are infused with goodness and sunshine are urged to get out of the way and let their pleasant nature unfold. On the other hand, parents who recognize the inevitable internal war between good and evil will do their best to influence the child's choices to shape his will and provide a solid spiritual foundation.
Okay, hold on.
He's putting way too much importance on the parental-child thing. It's like the parent essentially builds the child in this case, which is like, yes, and also no.
They're not autonomous humans that have responses, reactions, and decisions. No, they are just moldable clay, little baby dolls that you put together.
Okay, going back to that invented woman, this goes to a very key point. Dobson always assumes in these dogmatizings that the parents are solid people who are fully spiritually developed, enlightened Christians who have completed their catechesis, their spiritual growth, development, are always wholesome, always moral, always good. This is not what normal parents are.
Correct.
I don't know what he thinks the parents are, honestly, because I feel like he's not going like, oh, they're perfect, because obviously they wouldn't be having these problems. But at the same time, it's like he still assumes that with his advice, they will succeed.
Correct.
But what I'm saying is, in order to form these wicked children, you have to be so perfectly good to do so. You have to have been brought to being that high level of goodness out of such wickedness, because the development is not normal human psychology growth. It's the moral formation of wicked to good.
Correct.
He's assuming that everyone who is already, all parents are good, and they're
already gone through they've transformed
the moral transformation.
So this goes back to the Assemblies of God holiness doctrine. And that part of that is
what
that
is
once you
doctrine?
are saved, you are sinless.
Oh, that is some horse shit.
Okay, well, hold on. What is this again? What denomination is this again? Because that sounds interesting. Like, technically, it makes sense because, like, well, technically, like, Jesus has, like, saved you in a sense. It's like, you're sinless then, functionally. Not realistically, but functionally. I guess it's like, when we say sinless, I'm assuming you mean able to go to heaven, as opposed to sinless, like an actual sinlessness.
No, as in actual sinlessness. Assemblies of God is a little bit different. There's a couple of other denominations that share a similar holiness doctrine. I actually did a video about that in like 2022, I believe. So I'll link that.
This sounds like nonsense.
Oh, it is. In my opinion.
I don't see how it's functionally different from most other denominations, though. They just go they go one step farther, saying you're actually sinless as opposed to functionally sinless.
I would say in my denomination, Independent Baptists, it's very possible to sin to the point of
losing
your salvation. Like, not everybody agrees on that.
What particularly it is.
Right. Because if you backslide, someone like me who has rejected the faith that I was born with, they would not say that I was necessarily secure in my salvation, because either I was never really saved in the first point, or I have backslidden and committed the unforgivable sin. I've lost my salvation.
Do the Assembly of God people say there's no apostasy, where it's like once saved, always saved, no matter what?
I believe,
because like I feel like if they have backsliding too, then it's just like, okay, well, it's the same thing but with conditions. Obviously, everyone has sin because everybody thinks, so you're gonna have sin. So in that case, it's like unless you have the functionally sinless built into your thing, then there's like no one goes to heaven.
Here we go. Here it is. So the new birth. This experience is also known as the new birth and is an instantaneous and complete operation of the Holy Spirit upon initial faith in Jesus Christ.
So it's permanent. Like you can't ever lose it.
Exactly. And it is immediate. It is not a process of becoming holy. It is an instantaneous, you are holy.
Okay, I think other denominations have that same thing, but it's not a permanent thing.
This is just fully on the other side of the world from Catholic.
Right. But he says that for adults, our tendency is towards selfishness and stubbornness and sin. We are all, in effect, strong-willed children as we stand before God. Jesus, who represents the only sinless human being, expressed the opposite nature when he said in the Garden of Gethsemane, "Not my will, but thine be done." Thus, the Christian parent hopes to lead his child to this Jesus Christ, who alone can cleanse him of rebellion. It's a very old explanation of human nature, and it sounds terribly unscientific, but the Bible teaches it, and I believe it.
Nice.
Okay.
Bible said it, or what is it? God said it, Bible wrote it, I believe it. Something like that.
Bible said it, God wrote it, I believe it is the...
There we go. So now he talks about I statements. Now, if you have been in therapy, you have most likely been taught about I statements. So when you have a conflict with someone, you don't say, you made me feel such and such. You say, when this happened, I felt this, or I see this as being this, or I'm hearing this. It's all about what I am perceiving, what I am understanding, and it's not accusatory. So that way the person can go, oh, well, if that's what you're understanding, that is incorrect, because this is what I meant, blah blah blah. But you're supposed to use I statements to avoid being unnecessarily aggressive, accusatory, etc., which is ineffective communication when you are in a conflict. So they had this idea in the 70s. James Dobson thinks it's the worst, because he says that when I get Darlin Dale outside the store, there is little doubt that he is going to hear a few you messages, such as, when you get home, young man, you are going to have your bottom tanned.
I do like if you scroll up just a little bit, his the one where it's like, Diane embarrasses me and all that. It was like, he's just basically being passive aggressive. He switches from directly aggressive to passive aggressive. He never communicates.
Yeah, exactly.
Noel, could you translate that into a proper you statement? The messy room situation. Could you translate that into a proper you statement?
You mean a proper I statement or a proper?
Yeah, a proper I statement.
The messy room makes me feel uncomfortable, maybe, but like,
right.
That's still.
I feel uncomfortable with this messy room, or I feel anxious when I am surrounded by clutter, or something like that. But it's this whole passive aggressive bullshit cannot be fixed with an I statement.
I feel nervous that you're going to slip and fall in your messy room.
That would be an excellent option.
That still is like, it still feels passive aggressive to me. But at the same time,
but it's better. It's better than active shame.
It makes me feel anxious. Don't like that. Can you please clean it up?
Exactly.
I think that's probably a better way than be like, oh no, the neighbors might see your room and it's gonna make me feel bad. It's like, no, dude.
Yeah.
Don't bring neighbors into this. It's like, it's your feelings, not the neighbors. When it comes to like the evangelical, where it's like the idea of like keeping it in the group, and the neighbors aren't in that group. So if they see something, then like that's just bad, because now suddenly there's like a crack in the window that they there's a witness to your problem.
Facade has been ripped. Correct. Yeah. So we have another animal story. Yes. Perhaps a crude example would be illustrative. My daughter has a pet hamster who has a passion for freedom. He spends a portion of every night.
Something uncreatively named Hammy.
That's not uncreative. Yes. That is very creative.
That's an adorable little kid thing. Like, that's just what they do.
I had to put that in.
He spends a portion of every night gnawing on the metal bars of his cage and forcing his head through the trap door. Recently, I sat watching Hammy busily trying to escape, but I was not the only one observing the furry little creature. Sitting in the shadows a few feet away was Sigmund, our dachshund. His erect ears, squinted eyes, and panting tongue betrayed his sinister thoughts. Siggy was thinking, come on, baby, break through to freedom, bite those bars, Hambone, and I'll give you a thrill like you've never experienced.
I don't like the implication.
That is some serious anthropomorphizing.
No, right? The thing is, like, if you like bring this back into what I was saying before, like, involving the neighbors, he's basically saying like the neighbors are essentially looking for any little bit of weakness they can find. It's like, no.
Neighbors don't care.
This is how you make a kid anxious as fuck.
Correct. So he says that basically because the hamster wants to get out, not realizing the danger that is the dachshund, there are occasions when the longings and desires of our children would be harmful or disastrous if granted. And in later years, they might not see the harm of drug abuse and premarital sex and a life of uninterrupted fun and games. Like, he says that children, like the hamster, lack the perspective to observe the dangers which lurk in the shadows.
I mean, the thing is, he's not technically wrong.
Correct, but the dangers that he sees
explains the danger.
Exactly.
Just, like, don't do the thing because you'll die or something.
Well, and like, I remember as a tween and a teen, all of the ridiculous crap that I got told. I remember being petrified as a small child to go anywhere without a family member with me, an adult family member with me, because they convinced me that because I was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl, I was the prime target for being kidnapped and molested. Who tells their small child that they are going to be molested?
Evangelicals.
Apparently, right? And
And
then as I got older,
which is kind of fucked up.
Right? I was given magazines like Brio and whatnot from Focus on the Family that talked about how if you allowed yourself to be alone with a man or a boy, they would take advantage of you. And so you should never be in a situation where you are alone with someone of the opposite sex because you are in danger.
I mean, the thing is, it's like, that does apply in some circumstances. So it's
It
like,
does.
instead of saying all circumstances, you say these are circumstances and this is why. You don't go like
exactly.
all boys are bad, all men are bad. It's just like, don't just go trusting willy-nilly. But like, don't
as soon
just,
as you say all of these situations are bad, then you aren't actually keen on which things are actually red flags.
I mean,
and so when you get out into the real world and you experience situations where you're like, oh, well, this guy doesn't seem bad. It seems fine. Like, we're with other friends and stuff. And then you miss other red flags that are going on because you've been given this black and white.
What is ironic
is that
they're basically trying to protect you from that by going black and white. So it's like they're saying, like, well, like, we obviously don't want our children to have these terrible experiences. So we're going to say no boys, because if they never are alone with boys, they can never have a problem. But then they go out in the world and, like, because it's not all boys, they're going to find some that are fine and some that aren't, and they won't be able to tell the difference.
It's really frustrating that, you know, this kind of stuff is such a tried and true package of advice that is given to parents in 2024.
One thing that's really troubling me about all of this is the way he's looking at animals, anthropomorphizing them, deciding that it means things that are in line with his preconceived views, and then applying that animal, the morals drawn from that animal activity, this straight up eisegesis.
If you look at it from the view of, like, the relationship that I have is the most important thing, and then obviously because the relationships, you at that point in time, you basically say, because they're the commonality between the animal and the child, it's the same relationship and it's most important.
And then he applies that relationship that is really just his dynamics to, and universalizes it to all relationships. And it's just like, that's not how people work. That's not how kids work. That's not how the world outside the family works. Sir, would you like to please sit down? We have some questions.
On this very topic, we actually had a discussion in the Discord earlier this week about how purity culture had really harmed this person, because since they had been given this black and white view of things and they realized that, well, no, not all men are bad and not all women are good. And they struggled to be able to formulate healthy boundaries as an adult because they had been given this false dichotomy to work off of. And so it actually put them in danger by not having a more realistic set of cautions and suggested boundaries and whatnot. So, like, this is something that does very real damage to people. It's such a perversion of what should be, and yet it is rubber stamped as godly. And so therefore anyone who disagrees, well, they just don't understand God.
Well
said.
So I will actually get to the adolescent stage next time.
Wait, this is just the children?
That's just children.
What age does he consider adolescent to be?
Like 12.
So this is all pre-12. Dang. Sheesh.
Yeah.
I'm terrified. Yeah. Okay. I haven't read this. Can I make a prediction?
Yes.
You should do that.
Okay, Cameron, I'd like you to make a prediction too.
So what are we predicting? Like how, like, the advice that Dobson will give on how to deal with teenagers?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think? Hold on.
He's going to say when boys have their first mission, make sure that they have like a nocturnal blah blah blah. That you should make sure to make them do the laundry around that.
That makes way too much sense. So let me give you a category, okay?
Okay, sorry.
So what would Dobson's general advice be to parents of older teens who are getting ready to become adults in regards to freedom?
He would do both. He would say they should get as much freedom as they can handle, and also at the same time limit them like extremely. So I think he's going to do both.
Boys should go off to college, but they should live in the same town and go to the same church as their parents in the Bible studies, so that they are still in this sphere of influence as their parents.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna say he's gonna recommend getting weirdly like nosy into like the not the sex life, but like the attraction that the kids feel to others' kids. You should get really nosy about that.
What do you think he's going to say a parent should do to a teenager who's too old to spank? Next Dobson episode to get a little bit more detailed into the adolescent years and hopefully finish the strong-willed child, because I am anxious to be done with this. But it definitely deserves really to be looked at.
It's really good like fire starter.
I agree. If it wasn't a PDF, I would burn it. All right. Well, thank you for coming along with us on this roller coaster here. Make sure to follow us on the socials, comment, share. Make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to make sure that you get updated for all of our future posts and videos. And of course, if you are listening on Spotify, Audible, etc., you'll find all this information in the show notes. Thanks so much. Have a great night.